Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here, and we are going to be playing Hearts of Iron's Black Ice. Hearts of Iron 4's Black Ice, I should say. Obviously, this is Hearts of Iron 4. And we're playing as Germany, and we're taking a look and learning still a lot about the sort of much more detailed economic situation here, with needing to deal with fuel and energy and all of that stuff. And hello, General Skaven, how you doing? And hello, Green Fury. How is your day going? Oh, let's see here. Just do we have... Okay. Well, right now we have... No, this one. That's what I wanted. Okay, these are our reserves in equipment. We don't have enough mountain warfare. We definitely don't have enough trucks. So what we're going to do is form some more divisions. The infantry divisions won't probably hurt us. But the panzers probably will. The mountain, for lack of equipment. Now again, for those playing, the historical divisions are not. It's an opt-in. It's not forced upon you. If you don't want to play them, you don't have to, by any means. And hello, Starstreak. What do you think about Joe Biden? I heard a lot of Americans hate him now. Well, I've never liked Joe Biden. I don't know how many people hate him. I think he is an old man who is not mentally fully there anymore. I think that would be a relatively accurate statement.
Ausrücken!
Well, let's let the clock roll. Yes. Form the unit. Now that we've formed these units, let's slow this down just a little bit. And pause it, yes. Reclaiming the Sudeten land. Okay, demand the Sudeten land. We're going to demand the Sudeten land here. Yes. Okay, so we've gotten that. And just as I start making an episode, I get a message. Okay. Following people and what. Okay, that sounds good. Right. Okay. Sorry for that interruption, everyone. Okay. We just picked up the Sudeten land, and that is over here. We can press no, we're not going to do this. We can get the first Vienna award 16 days. Pushing down towards the fate of Czechoslovakia. What I'm thinking... Well, $35 days, 56 days. We'll go do 35 days first. Now, we have, let's just check up here. God, I still hate the state mechanic. We've gotten 2 more civil factories. And over here we've got, wow. We got 5 military and another civil factory. And here, 2 more civilian factories. So we just made out really well with the Sudetenland. Okay, well, we just did see here, and we formed a bunch more divisions, but mountain warfare equipment and trucks are heavily needed. So I think that is where we should, well, yeah, where we should. Focus our production on. Okay, we're going to go all the way to 3 to mountain warfare. Hopefully get it up and producing, and then cut back, shall we say, to 2. Okay, we're also going to jump to the latest Emil model of fighters. Okay, we need more steel. Well, let's get 2 factories worth. Norway. We're going to let unit division.
Bereit. Ausrücken.
These guys
Bereit.
press into our new territory to
Achtung.
make the Czechs nervous.
Angetreten. Ausrücken.
There we go, just a little bit of pushing in on them. And we also, all right, this was, I think this was it consumer electronics? Okay, well, the computing machine. If you're going to do these, and I recommend doing them if you're a major nation, then do them early, because they will benefit all the other research. The Irish trade war. All of these divisions, let's see how we're doing with stuff still. I know we would be down there. Oh, light vehicles, we also have to do those. These hopefully will catch up on soon. Yeah, we have a lot of political power. Those who have not watched the entire series will know that at the start, I gave Germany a lot of political power to make changes to make it more historical as I saw fit, and partially to fill some of these blank things. But I don't know right now where, if any of these things, we should change. I don't think we should so much. We're going to be needing to organize up do heat ammunition early. This is diesel. We're doing mostly that. Regular gasoline engines. This is what I think here. Well, okay, we don't have the check technology for that. Don't have anti-tank upgrade for that. Anti-tank upgrade, which... Oh, let me see that. Okay, well... I guess we'll just do the Kubel wagon. Yes, but first we need to come here and that. Then this is what I want to get rid of. Okay. You're not building any of that? Oh, no, they're up here at the top. Okay. Yes. We're going to go with the D model. Yeah. GTA 6. Not my type of game. The Lima Conference. What is the Lima Conference? The Lima Conference held in Lima, Peru. Wow. Man, they got that. They were lucky. I mean, if they hadn't held it in Lima, Peru, the Lima Conference wouldn't have made so much sense. All right. Concludes with the adoption of the Declaration of American Solidarity. Representatives from American states gather to reaffirm their commitment to shared principles and values that unite them as a continent. The Declaration emphasizes the spiritual unity achieved through Republican institutions, a resolute desire for peace, a profound sense of humanity and tolerance. Boy, what a lot of BS this is, if you look at the actual history. And an unwavering adherence to the principles of international law, equal sovereignty of the states, and individual liberty without religious or racial bias. Conference recognized that respect for the personality, sovereignty, and independence of each American state is vital for maintaining international order and continual solidarity. It builds upon previous declarations and agreements, including those of Inter-American Conference for the Maintenance of Peace in Buenos Aires, which endorses the principles of inter-American solidarity and cooperation. In addition to the Declaration of American Solidarity, the conference issues a Declaration of American Principles. This declaration emphasizes the pressing need to uphold fundamental principles in the international relations, emphasizing the preservation of world order under the rule of law, the pursuit of peace with justice. Oh boy, this is so much bullshit if you look at real history. And not that this wouldn't be a nice thing, but just and the advancement of social and economic well-being for humanity. Lima Conference serves as a significant milestone in the strengthening of bonds between American nations, fostering cooperation and promoting the shared values of peace, justice, and prosperity throughout the continent. Wow. Wow. Hello, Crispin. How you doing? Good day to you, too. Okay. This is just Triggered Gamer. And I think it's worth talking about. I know I'm supposed to be playing World War II right now, but First off, and I know one of the viewers is currently live is from Latin America. I'm trying to figure out how to say some of this correctly. National power, or power of each nation, obviously is not equal. You know, Denmark is stronger than Liechtenstein, but maybe not San Marino. But no, that's a bit of a joke. San Marino has some tough Marines, but they're a really small unit. So yes, you're never going to have equality between nations. That's another thing. Is China goes on and on about unequal treaties. There's never been an equal treaty in the history of mankind. Between nations is what we're talking about, of any sort, even peace treaties or defense treaties or whatever. There's always various national powers. A lot of, and sometimes when governments speak about things, their audience is the domestic audience. Hello, MMDB, how you doing? Is a domestic audience. So they're what they're saying is a lot of bullshit. They don't necessarily mean it, but they want to blame the problems of their nation on some external factors. Other times, it's not necessarily it is not a domestic. It is an international, whether international to governments or international people that complain. One of the big complaints, and we're talking about Latin America here, and Arno is here. Hello, Arno. Is American, and they mean United States of America, interference in Latin America, and the Monroe Doctrine. That was, and I don't know all the details of it right off the top of my head, but that was by President Monroe, which was, at the time, America was way too weak to enforce it. But the idea that they were going to keep non-American powers from getting conquests or getting more and more influence in the Americas. At the time, it was, of course, focused greatly on Europe. Now, of course, there have been, France and Britain's invasion of Mexico and whatnot. So, again, that was happened during the American Civil War when America didn't have the power to block it. Now, to all Latin American viewers who ever happen to watch this or whatnot, be grateful. Be grateful for the Monroe Doctrine, because for all of you, pick at whatever nation who, and whatever, whether it's the faction that's in charge in the nation at whatever moment of time, or if it's a other faction, that you wish that, oh, hey, you could get support from Russia or, the Soviet Union during the Cold War, or, oh, hey, right now in a modern sense, China will build roads and power plants in Peru or someplace like that. And if the U.S. is running around blocking some of this influence, and you would like to use it as a counterbalance to American or United States influence, for whatever reasons, and they're not external reasons, whatever reasons your nations aren't doing well, Latin America, and I would say collectively, especially that they've took one of the jewels of Latin America, Venezuela, and turned it into one of the biggest shitholes in Latin America. And we're going to get to some of this stuff here soon. That the reason whatever the reasons there are that you're not doing well, and I would say that they're all internal. And yes, it comes from the colonial experience of primarily Spain, but yes, I also know, um, Portugal in the case of Brazil, and yeah, I know France and the Dutch and um, the British too in some places. But there's colonial legacy, absolutely. But the reason you're not doing well is of internal reasons, and it isn't because of sabotage of the U.S. or something else. The U.S. is protecting, or has been as much as they can, has been protecting Latin America, has been trying to have stability in Latin America. I know it may not feel that way, but it really is a situation where um, and yes, you can go, oh, but gamer, this thing bad America did, and that thing bad America did. Yeah, yeah, supporting the United Fruit Company in its domination of places in the banana republics, as they sort of came to me, like the Dominican Republic. Yeah, it's not. Nothing is 100% good. We're not saying that. At least I'm not saying that. But overall, it's a positive because look at what this Lima conference bullshit. Well, around this time, in the 1930s, you had a Ecuadorian-Peruvian war. You had the Chaco War, which was Bolivia versus Paraguay. Jump back a bit before that, you had a Bolivia versus, what was it, Chile, trying to get I don't know, it was Peru involved too. Sorry, I forget. Bolivia's attempt to get some coastline, um, wars, and you now have basically Venezuela declaring that roughly half of what on this map is British Guyana, but Guyana, claiming that and is threatening to militarily invade. They've, in the recent past, Venezuela gave up any claims to this territory. Recent past as in since World War II, I do believe. And it isn't until they found a bunch of oil sitting off of what would be Guyanan coastal territory that they cared about it. It's oil, it's greed. And the U.S., you can talk about the U.S. influences. Some of the stuff, this Lima conference bullshit that was going on, of peace, justice, and prosperity. Now, I'm not against the idea of peace, lack of war between nations. That's a good thing. Justice, if you're talking about not social justice, but actual justice, because social justice is the opposite of justice. And prosperity, we're not talking, about equality or whatever other bullshit, prosperity. Yeah, that's all good, and I think the U.S. would want to promote that. And if you look at particularly during the Cold War, you had what would be a European supplied and supported insurgencies in many nations, obviously famously in places like Cuba, Nicaragua, El Salvador, but others Colombia had with FARC, and Peru, Sendero Luminoso, and other guerrilla movements that the local nations could have easily handled if it weren't for communists supporting the guerrilla movements from outside. Because I say communist, I mean Soviet Union, China. The Soviet Union is doing a lot of them. Sendero Luminoso, I believe, is mainly a Chinese-supported element. So yes, that then invites, whether it's the Monroe Doctrine or others, invites American interference. And sometimes that interference is benevolent, and sometimes it's not entirely. I know that, but you know, the question comes down to is, when is it justified to interfere with others' behavior? And we're talking other nations. When is it justified, interfere with other nations? And I would say at one point or another, all of the Latin American nations have gladly accepted United States aid. And aid on that scale comes with strings, conditions. So, I don't know, Arno. I should only have sort of kind of one. Oh, well, maybe it's one is crisis report. Also has a rumble thing that you may be seeing. I don't know, Arno. So, and some country like Guyana now is basically going, help me, help me, help me, help me, protect us from Venezuela. Because of course they have neglected their armed forces, and their country is not the most industrialized large power out there, obviously. And so they're going, help me, help me, help me. Well, okay, that's not a bad idea of helping them out because from a neighboring bully nation. But then you're going to get other nations around them going, oh, American interference. And 20 years from now, after we've helped them, and we're like going, hey, yeah, we want you to do X, Y, and Z, whatever that may be, that's the strings that are attached, and they don't like it. So, yeah, and I know, General Skaven here is our Latin American, and he can have his opinions, whether he agrees with me or disagrees with me on a lot of these subjects. But I've heard a lot about this because my political science university, the head of the political science department was a Latin American specialist, and very much coming from a Latin American perspective and not a United States perspective on what was good. So, okay, Arno, well, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll look into it some other time. So, yeah, so I may have a bit of a, uh, chip on my shoulder about complaints about things on Latin America. But this sort of, the combination of the brewing war of Venezuela here, and I do know that Brazil also, has some sort of border dispute with Guyana too. But that I think is something sort of like a little bit of this territory here or some such thing. That's more of just, I think, a dispute of where should the border be out in some jungle that is unimproved area. And some of these borders are, shall we say, bullshit, because they're just basically on the map and between the drug. And yes, I know the drug problem is not all America, because I know drugs go into Europe and other places too. But America is, of course, a big customer for drugs. The drugs and other revolutionary movements have sort of make these borders somewhat bullshit out here in the rainforest. And then you get Argentina, return the Falklands to us. They never had it. Spain never had it. Argentina never had it. Oh, yeah, it did for however many days until Britain took it back, yes. But just because it's off the coast of Argentina doesn't mean, is it just because, I don't know, I'm trying to think. Does Madagascar belong to Mozambique because it's off the coast of Mozambique, or do the Comoros Islands belong to Mozambique because it's off the coast of Mozambique, or does it belong to Madagascar because it's off the coast of Madagascar? And even if these were continued, I know they're sort of independent today, but even if these were to continue to be a colonial or European power, does that make them belong to some onshore entity? No, it doesn't. That just Australia should belong to New Zealand in that case. Yes, Star Streak, or vice versa. Now that is a little bit further away, but we can see, the mere fact that an island off the coast somewhere, does Singapore really belong to Malaya? It's a bullshit thing. And here, Socotra here, which has some really weird plants on it, should it belong to Somalia because it's much closer to Somalia than it is to Yemen, which is in the middle of civil war, but so is Somalia. Oh, I mean, they're both in the middle of civil war. So Indonesia should belong to Australia. Yeah, and so so that's the bullshit case. There is no, and people have looked into this. There has been, there very well might have been a Spanish ship, and some guy comes off the Spanish ship at some date with a flag and says this belongs to the Habsburg Empire or something. 500 years ago, that something like that might have happened, but that is not. But there was never a persistent Spanish colony, let alone a post-Napoleonic era Argentinian, post Simon Bolivar. See, I know about these things. I've studied this. Simon Bolivar. That's where you get Bolivia from. The name of the country, his throwing off Spanish rule at the end of the Napoleonic Wars. It's never even since then. So it's never been Argentine. It's never been Latin, and that it's always been an English-speaking possession and habitation. And there is, to my knowledge, again, we don't know everything, but to my knowledge, there was no prior human habitation. This is not like some of the Pacific Islands out here that have small populations on them. It was never inhabited by humanity prior to that. So there is no claim of Argentina as there. And they really, I know the president. What's his name? He seems like a pretty cool guy, sort of a weird guy. What's his name right there? I think he's just making those statements just to appease the militarists and not really planning on retaking back the Falklands for Argentina. And there really is, other than quote unquote national pride, the only thing that they're really worried about, I think, is potentially oil offshore, because this really isn't that much of an economic boon, and all the people are basically English, and there's probably not that many Argentinians that, if they were allowed to, would want to move there. So I don't think it's like that kind of thing. Okay, and Star Trek, the Maori would object very strongly to that. Yeah, well, we would see. Hi, Jeton. Just watched a good movie about nation building. It's on YouTube if you're interested. Well, maybe sometime. The only way for Venezuela to invade Guyana is by land, is through Brazil. Yeah, I don't know right offhand, Skaven, the terrain. I know it is very jungly around here. I've met, I don't want to overstate it, met a few people who, back during the Cold War, when Suriname was in the communist sphere, were dealing with some anti-communist type rebels there, and hearing about the conditions of moving around, mostly by river. Because they weren't able to use the few roads that existed. in Suriname. So, yeah, it's pretty rough territories as far as I know. The Ugly American, English full movie, adventure drama thriller. Okay, interesting. Yeah, they object to everything. Based on U.S. Burma after World War II. Okay, yeah. In a way, the Amazon jungle presents some of the wars. Yes, absolutely. And this is what I'm saying is this sort of neat line drawn on a map, and then you get into the realities of the jungle along here. The border ain't so clean. It's pretty rough, and um, it's a Marlon Brando movie. Venezuelans bold enough to do it, anyways. Well, I don't know, and NMDB, since we're still on Venezuela and Guyana, I don't know how much, because, I think it's something like a third, literally a third of Venezuelans have fled Venezuela because the conditions are so bad there. And so those that are, you lose a third of your population, and of course, way too many have come up to the United States. You lose a third of your population, which doesn't like the government. That doesn't mean the other 2/3 like the government. It just means that the 2/3 that are left, maybe the 1/3 that likes the government, is now in a stronger position. Venezuela was one of the economic jewels in Latin America. They have a fair amount of oil as it is. That they have, by nationalizing, they get money, and now the United States have recently lessened the sanctions against Venezuela oil because of our sanctions against Russian oil to sort of make up for that. But I don't know how much of it is just to try to rally support for the government, which I think is only in power because of revolutionary military force and not because of general consensus of the population. So yeah, it's a situation in which is rough. Let's see. Hello, ship commander. They fled to neighboring. Oh, I know a lot of them are in Colombia, but a lot have come north. That is what I was thinking. The economic is on the toilet, and now the leader is asking for the population to die for oil. Pretty much, who has the guns and the power? Absolutely, because they've given to they've handed out guns and authority to a lot of the poor people who don't have much in Venezuela, and that's always the case in any country, but it's often starker in Latin American country. U.S. needs to intervene. And, well, I think it would not be for the best for the U.S. to put ground forces into Guyana. I think if Gamer was president, well, first I would probably have long ago, you do know, people, that there is no American law against assassinating foreign leaders. There is only a presidential directive to American intelligence agencies to not assassinate foreign leaders, whether it's the actual people in power or opposition leaders, without the president's approval. Because back in the 60s or whatever, the local CIA chief, whether it was in Iran or in somewhere in Latin America, might get into their heads to assassinate a foreign leader, and without checking with higher authority. Just, oh, well, you can get a sniper in there to take out that bad guy, do it, kind of thing. And oh shit, this causes big ramifications. Well, so they put this presidential directive, I forget which one it is, not to do that without the U.S. president, without asking the U.S. president for permission, because it is in essence an act of war, even if the guy who's pulling the trigger may be a person from the local country, so it just, but still sort of set up by the U.S. I don't think the U.K. would abandon a Commonwealth country. Okay, well, Skaven, is Guyana still in the Commonwealth? It very well may be. So let's see. Bush Senior conversation inbound. No. Okay, so I might very well have taken out not the bus driver Mundero, taken out the communist. I'm blanking on the name. I'm picturing his face. In Venezuela attacks, it's suicide. CIA history, yeah. Homogeneous can of worms in there. Oh, humongous can of worms, yes. Yeah, okay, so I very well in the past may have taken out some leaders, but looking at the situation today and Guyana, if I were the U.S. president, I would be sending some ships right now off the shore of Guyana because of... I would not send a proper carrier, a big carrier, just because they're all busy either facing off China or other parts of the world. We are sort of stretched thin at the moment. But I would put at least a few warships off the coast, maybe an LHA, the sort of, helicopter carrier, maybe one of them. But I would definitely put some ships off the coast. And as Skaven says, he says the only way for Venezuela to get to Guyana is through Brazil. Yeah, someone could look up Google Maps and see if there's any roads or whatnot. I just don't know right off the top of my head. But I would put that in a put some ships off there to say you're not going to be using the sea to get to Guyana. Remember, this is part of the United States up here, Puerto Rico. So we are in the neighborhood. Oh, we also have, is it here? We have some U.S. Virgin Islands and whatnot here. But I think maybe something down here, but I'm not sure. So we are in the area. Yes, and so that I would be talking to my British allies about scheduling a joint training mission between Guyanan forces. If I was president today, and we're looking at this, understanding what's going on in the world, like, oh shit, I got dropped into this, because it wouldn't be as bad if I had been president up to this point. But if I was dropped into this, I would be putting some U.S. vessels off of here. I would be asking Britain to do a joint training mission of some sort of ground forces down here in Guyana, whether it's the British SAS or just some other infantry battalions, or maybe have them send some Gurkhas down there as for a joint training mission, and just keep it as joint training. And I would maybe schedule whether it's a joint naval and Navy and Air Force air training mission somewhere in this vicinity. Not necessarily right at the border of Venezuela. This is the Dutch. down here, Curacao. And so with all of that going on, I think this just stays talk. Oh yeah, we could, well, with air refueling, yeah, we can fly cap over here. Now, if with all of that going on, if Venezuela does invade, I would not put U.S. ground forces in there. I would again try to encourage Britain to maybe actually send some ground forces in there. Maybe Britain could send one of its 2 carriers. I think only one of it is operational because one of them broke, and I don't know that they've got it fixed yet. But down here, but I would mostly keep, and I might send some. I know we've sent all of our munitions and equipment to Ukraine, but maybe we could scrape up some, not like high-tech equipment, but just some equipment to reinforce Guyana, just to sort of show Venezuela that if they were to do it, the U.S. would stop a naval invasion. The U.S. very well might shoot down any Venezuelan aircraft over Guyana, whether from ships, because they have a lot of surface-to-air missiles, or from aircraft. You know, we do have a nice little friend down here in Grenada. Yeah, Grenada really likes us. That we could also, and they have a really nice air base that some Cubans started and we finished way back. If you know the story of that. So yeah, we can. Oh, and trust me, this is Trinidad and Tobago down here. Trinidad is here. Tobago is up here. But Grenada, I think, is this one or this one. Sorry if I'm not 100% on all these, but I'm pretty sure it's that one. Grenada, yeah, is something of a U.S. puppet, but also watching stuff with Venezuela, Grenada knows that it might be next. So they would definitely allow refuel basing, simple basing of U.S. aircrafts off there, even whether the Dutch would want us to base off of Curacao or not. I think we would readily be able to stop any invasion down here and whatnot. And so it's a minor thing. Guyana is still a member of the Commonwealth. Thanks, IKB. I wasn't absolutely sure on that. Maybe put some local poor ships like the Dutch frigate and British. Yeah, quite possibly. You could send some of those. The Netherlands annex Venezuela. Yeah, right. There are British. Well, that would be again. And this is what the Monroe Doctrine says. Now, we don't have to follow it, but the Monroe Doctrine does not want to see expansion of non-American powers. Again, originally it was focused obviously on Europe, but in the modern day sense, China or some other place may be trying to influence. So we don't want to see the Dutch getting any more power or the British getting any more power. But if Guyana is still a commonwealth nation, that would say the British, they can, intervene to support them. They should not be allowed to, annex Venezuela or something. So there are British and Dutch Marines in the area, which can help also Dutch. Yes, absolutely. Hello, amazing. Yes, the Lima conference, a lot of bullshit. Yes, how you doing, amazing? So yeah, and so we're looking at this, and I had somebody ask me, I forget who it was recently, but I think the reason a lot of these wars are happening is because the perceived American weakness, one, and two, I think I'm pretty damn sure a lot of these nations perceive America as weak. And two, the perception now, I think this is the perception that governments are making, is that nuclear weapons are off the table. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I do know that from my training back in ROTC days, and one of my training officers prior to being, a teacher in college, I mean, he was a full time United States Army officer, but teaching in ROTC. But his previous job had been in Europe, commanding a missile battery in Germany. The Lance missile is, the theater range nuclear missile. So he was commanding a nuclear missile battery in Germany, and they were very much under the idea that he was going to be shooting his nuclear missiles at invading Warsaw Pact forces at some point, if the war was to break out, because he did not believe the NATO forces were going to be strong enough in conventional power to stop the Soviet advance, if you will, and that they weren't just going to abandon the missiles in place. I mean, they were mobile missiles or something, and just let them be turned over to the Soviet Union and just keep that a conventional war. So he was very much, he was going to be shooting theater range missiles into either East Germany or into recently occupied parts of West Germany, focusing, on Soviet armored battalions or not battalions, divisions, and nuking them. And so the perception was that, and then if that was going to maybe be happening locally, well, maybe the Soviet Union would be, oh shit, we're being shot at locally. Well, then let's press the big button and launch them all against the U.S. And the U.S. would be thinking, oh shit, if we use local nukes, they're going to use nukes. So we better just start out using the big nukes, first strike. That was very much the thought during the Cold War. China at the time had a stated policy, and I do believe it was their actual policy, of no first strike with nuclear weapons, because one, they really didn't have a lot of global missiles, being able to, at the time, to be able to really wage a good global war. And if we were to target, retarget our, I don't know how difficult it was, but retarget our missiles on China and strike them, it would do really bad. And I think China mostly just wanted its nuclear missiles so that we wouldn't nuke them, that they could strike back. And they thought that they were strong enough, especially in a post-Korean War era, that they were strong enough that they could defend their nation conventionally, so they didn't need to use nukes to defend their nation, just as a, if you nuke us, we'll nuke you kind of thing. And so it was mainly, and otherwise that they would sit out a big global nuclear war. Because, hey, if everyone else nukes themselves, then only China will be left. But now with what's happening in Ukraine and other conflicts even before then, I think we're seeing nations go, nuclear weapons are off the table. We're willing to roll the dice on other wars. And so I think we're seeing a lot of wars break out because of that. I know there were a lot of wars during the Cold War. But I think sort of globally, there has been a nuclear peace. Because as Pakistan and India have gotten more nuclear weapons, there at least seems to be less, and hear my words carefully, less conventional wars between Pakistan and India. Now, there's still the conflict in the Kashmir, and there's still periodic Islamic terrorists that are maybe directed by or maybe slightly supported by the Pakistani government. I don't know how much Pakistan supporting all of these different actions. There's still, minor fighting going on, but it's not been, out and out wars. So I think we've been seeing a nuclear peace, but I think, again, people are thinking nuclear weapons are not as likely to be used. So, yeah, I think that's why we're having all this war. And hello, Hagimas Spipogairos. I'm sure I'm butchering that. Don't mean to. Hello, yes. The Royal Dutch Navy flexing its no. Starstreak. It's not the Royal Dutch Navy flexing its muscles. It's the Royal Dutch Fleet flexing its muscle. Singular. There's only one muscle left in the Royal Dutch Fleet. They don't have muscles anymore. They just have a muscle. The only road and plane place to Guyana close to Venezuela is through the state of Romana, the Brazilian state close. Yeah, and if that's the case, I don't think we're going to see Venezuela attack through Brazil, especially if Brazil moves some troops into the region. Both are they are currently operational. Great, IKB, because I know one of them had a propeller shaft problem a while ago, and I just haven't been keeping up on whether they got it fixed yet. So Brazil, okay, good. So if they're there, so I think this is likely as much just rhetoric. Local regime is doing poorly. Let's blame some foreigners for our poorness, and let's rally the people around a cause that is bullshit. I think as much as anything else, Yarn has flown over South American cities as an intimidation tactics. Boy, I should learn to speak. Actually, I'm sort of dry mouthed at the moment. Something here. Yeah, and I know Venezuela has, in the last 20 years, have picked up a lot of conventional military equipment. But the mere fact that they bought it, and they probably got it in good condition, doesn't mean it's still running. It could be, but I don't know. So, yeah, this is probably a lot of hot air over Guyana, Venezuelan Guyana. Now, obviously, while we're looking at wars around the world, you have Hamas going into active military operations against Israel and is losing badly because of it. You have Iran using the Israel conflict there, attacking the United States through their Houthi allies, so-called. I don't know if you guys are aware, but United States naval vessels, United States ships, I believe, and definitely ships flagged from other nations that may or may not have some person with Israeli ownership as part owner of the vessel. If you look into the shipping world, it's sort of murky as to who's owning it, who's chartering it, who's building the ship, but have been attacked by drones, shall we say, from somewhere in Yemen. And there's a sort of permanently stationed or long-term stationed Iranian ship sitting out here, and it's been sitting out here for months and months and months. Out here, that's probably sending intelligence to the Yemenis for their attacks. I am sure, I don't necessarily have the direct knowledge, but I am sure that the drones are made in Iran, and Iran actually is making drones that are being used by Russia against Ukraine. They actually make some decent drones. And I'm also pretty damn sure that the guy who's operating or maybe standing behind the operator of those drones is an Iranian. So Iran is using a proxy because it doesn't believe the U.S. will strike at them, and they're striking at U.S. vessels. Now, they haven't hit any U.S. vessels in any of these things, but there's been missiles that have been coming danger close, or whatever shall we say, whether their trajectory or path would have actually put them into a U.S. vessel or just simply flying so near it that the U.S. vessel wasn't going to allow it, and so shoots them down, meaning it may have got the U.S. vessels, I forget the name of the destroyer, but there's like a cargo ship or bulk carrier, tanker, doesn't matter what, but whatever has been coming through here. And yes, the U.S., been coming through the center of the Red Sea here. And yes, the U.S. vessel very well may have positioned itself in between the coast and this other vessel. And the missiles or, drones or whatever, suicide drones, whatever. In essence, cruise missiles. Very well may have just been sort of overflying the American vessel, but and get shot, but they get too close and get shot down. Now there have been using more ballistic targeted vessels targeting some U.S. ships out here. So yeah, that's all going on because the U.S. is perceived weak. The whole Ukraine war is because perceived weak. More and more attacks on Filipino vessels, and now these attacks are mostly coming from water cannon, but water cannon that are super powerful for putting out fires on ships from actually small ships. These Coast Guard vessels that China is using are small ships that are potentially deadly. And an attack, I think it was up in here, on an Australian naval vessel by a Chinese vessel. And which, what's Australia do? Nothing. But yeah, they fire the Chinese fired on a Australian vessel. They didn't fire a ballistic missile, but they fired a sonar wave or sonar waves. You just say sonar. Well, they were divers off the vessel clearing a net that got tangled in the propeller, and they were very close, turning on their sonar at full power, which can be deadly to divers in the water that close. Now, if it's 20, 30 miles away, it's nothing. But when it's that close, because they were right up near the situation. I mean, coming very, very close to the situation, and then turning on their sonar, which which was an attack against the Australian vessel and the crew. Dutch Navy currently has 4 modern AI defense frigates, 2 standard frigates, 4 submarines, several dozen other ships. That said, 2 submarines are inoperable, and 2 of the air defense frigates are in dry dock. Yeah, it's a muscle. It's just one muscle. Yeah, all that equals one muscle. That said, the Dutch air defense frigates are on of the few in Europe who can intercept missiles in outer space. Okay, so they can have high altitude. Oh, and I know we've been off the topic of World War II for a long time. On the topic of attacking U.S. ships here and out here by drones and other ballistic type missiles, I believe these are being done as much to test drones against the U.S. Navy, because we have seen with the Moskva being sunk by Ukraine forces and other Russian vessels being sunk by Ukraine forces using various types of drones. I think it's a test to see how how effective those type of attacks might be against the U.S. Navy. And we're seeing none get anywhere near damaging the U.S. vessels. What was I forget the name of the destroyer that was damaged way back in, I think it was the port of Aden or something way back when. And that was a suicide bomber in the middle of the port that was on a boat that got too close and blew a hole in the side of the vessel. Didn't sink the vessel, did, $1 billion worth of damage or something, but killed some American sailors. But forget what port they were in. Could have been up in the Gulf, I forget, but I thought it was Aden, but I don't know. But yeah, at sea, so far, we're not nearly as vulnerable as Russia is to drone attacks. I think a lot of what's going on here is an attempt on that. Well, on that note, I think we're going to keep these. This is somewhat short. I know somewhat long already. So we're going to end the episode here. So I want to thank everyone. Hope it was an interesting look at Latin America, the Lima conference, and of course, modern conflicts around the world. So thanks, everyone. See you next time for more, yes, even more Hearts of Iron.